Hey guys, what's up? Excoundrel here, and we are going to be doing a Grace Captain gameplay, and I'm going to be doing some commentary on it, talking about the important things, talking about my item choices, talking about my skill choices, and things like that. I'll go through them in depth as we move on. So, I chose Grace as captain here. I was playing in a duo queue with one of my guildmates, Itchy or Itachi19. If you've watched my old videos, you'll know that I play quite a lot with this guy. We are taking the back camps to start with the Skaarf here. Itchy is in lane on Gwen. There are two options when you start a game. You either give the back camps to your laner and your jungler, and you stand where I am right now on the screen to protect invades into your jungle, or your laner goes to lane, shoves the lane up, and then you get the back camps with your jungler. Those were the two options. Also looking at my starting items, I went a potion, a flare, Iron Guard contract, and Oak Heart. Super standard build. That's basically the go-to standard build for pretty much any captain carry in the game. Pot gives you trading potential in trades, and obviously you need the flare in some points. So this is basically the game-deciding early fight. This kind of got us a big lead in the early game, and that is specifically because you need to secure things like an Elder Treant. If you're fighting 2 versus 2 against the enemy jungler and the captain, you need to fight and make sure that you secure the Elder Treant, because if you lose the Elder Treant, you lose the trade. That's the golden advice about taking trades around Elder Treant, or just Treants in general. Invades, or, you know, moves onto the enemy Treants in their back jungle or their forward jungle. You need to be damn sure that you're going to get that Treant, because if you lose the Treant, you lose the trade. So what I did in that particular engage, if you want to go back and look later on, I used my A onto Blackfeather to force him away, to make it harder for him, or harder for him to calculate when to use his B to go for a steal, which gave the Treant, or gave the best chance for Skaarf to get the Elder Treant, which basically won us the trade. And obviously Blackfeather dived in, thinking he could trade with a Skaarf who's got an Elder Treant buff on him. Wasn't the case, died instantaneously. So that was a big early game trade for Skaarf, because it's going to allow him to farm for pretty much free for a good few minutes at this point. And that's a very important thing to note. So I helped Skaarf with a little bit, and now I'm going to move into the lane. This is a tough decision-making process for any captain, because you want to be able to spend a bit of time in jungle, but you need to be able to rotate between jungle and lane. If you don't rotate to lane, you open up your laner to ganks from the enemy, and you could get 3v1'd quite easily, especially if they've got something like a good ganker, like a lance or a glaive. You have to be ready to protect that as a captain, and that's why I'm now in lane. I saw Arden up in lane. I wanted to respond by moving to lane just to protect Itchy on this Gwen. Now, look at Skaarf's positioning right now. He's moving into the enemy jungle. The sensible thing is to go and support him, because you don't want Skaarf to get caught by himself, especially as there is vision in that tri-brush. So I'm going to follow Skaarf at this point, and now we're going to look for a flank as Arden showed himself in lane. So we're going to be moving in. I just zone the Vox out here, use my B, and we should be able to secure this kill onto Arden. That goes over to Itchy. And that was all because I made a move out of lane to follow Skaarf, and then we both got the flank and gank into lane. Got to keep an eye on everybody's positioning on the map. It's really important to make good decisions as a captain, especially in the early game. As you can see here, I'm just deciding about what to buy. I was thinking about sort of mixing up my build, but obviously the first item that any captain wants to go for is you want to be able to go for fountain. So just get the components of a fountain. It gets you close enough to fountain as possible. Another really important point of being a captain is getting vision early on. Look at my vision that I've got in my bag already. I would almost consider this too little. I'm a big fan of good early vision. Tried to go for the steal here. Alas, was not the case. And they didn't take a fight. I don't think they felt they were comfortable enough to. I'm a big fan of early vision control, and I like to put a lot of early vision down. The only key scout trap that you absolutely need is the one that I placed just there. If you're placing a scout trap in that brush, it basically it keeps enemies from making easy ganks into lane, because they'll be seen going through that brush. It also keeps them from going and stealing your forward healing Treant easily, because you'll be able to see them do it. So it's the only absolutely necessary scout trap that you need in the early game, but I like to expand my scout trap vision a little bit more than that, and I'll talk about that in a separate video that I'm doing on vision, but also I'll show you throughout this game as well. The reason I positioned it at that point in the tri-brush there is it means it's farther enough away from the enemy, so the enemy has to move a little bit further to clear it. They can't just walk into the brush and walk out. Got a little bit of a fight here. I think Itchy went a little bit too aggressive. I just jumped in with my A, try and shield some of the damage onto my carries, because remember, you get a holy shield on nearby allies directional to where the target is. So I did that there. Also trying to get as many of my passive procs, my heroic perk procs as possible. This is an interesting fight. I saw Skaarf go for an invade. They knew Skaarf was going for an invade just because Vox had gone back. And we actually come away with these double camps. So despite being in a really bad situation here, we do actually come away with a bit of a win. I'm just trying to distract as much as possible. You can see here I killed the Vox, and at this point in time, just trying to buy time for Itchy to get out. Unfortunately, that was a little bit too aggressive from Skaarf, especially post 4 minutes. You have to be super careful when invading post 4 minutes, just because the Crystal Miner's there. Crystal Miner is something that will really cause you massive issues if you invade and don't respect it. So we invaded. I think we got. I didn't see that thing there, but I'm pretty sure we got the camps there. So Skaarf did get a bit of a net gold increase, and any gold that you can funnel onto a Skaarf is going to be beneficial for you because Skaarf really benefits from high gold values. He needs to get those items quickly. So you can see I've rounded up some items here. Again, keeping on top of my vision with a scout trap, placing that in our lane brush. We have a little bit of a fight here. Try to go in, but unfortunately we don't get anything from it. I went for the fountain. It is the essential first captain item, unless you've got a need for something like a contraption or you want to rush a Crucible versus Finn. 9 times out of 10, you're going to want a fountain. I'm also working towards a Crucible because realistically, the only thing that I'm going to need to block here is going to be a Arden Gauntlet at some point. You see Skaarf a little bit overextended. I think we're just going to end up walking out of this, but unfortunately, Itchy's being a little bit over-aggressive and kind of gets himself killed. At this point, I'm probably going to die as well. I tried to buy time with my B, but unfortunately we were a little bit over-aggressive, went too hard to go for the turret, and that's one thing that you have to, I guess, think about when you're making aggressive moves like that. Especially if you lose your jungler, it would have been much better for me and Itchy just to back off there. We weren't going to get anything extra, bar a couple of extra CS by staying, so we basically lose a lot more than we gain by staying too close to the turret. So if you end up in a 3 versus 2, you've got to make a decision whether, is it better for you to stay? Yes, if you can get the turret, it might be worth it. But in that situation, 100% not worth it. We should have backed off a lot earlier. I stayed a little bit too long to try and protect Itchy. And that have ended up killing me as well. So my own personal mistake was staying a bit too long as well. So now I'm level 6. This is a really strong fighting tool for Grace because you have your ultimate, especially when you've got 2 sort of hyper carry type heroes on your team. You've got a Skaarf and a Gwen, both of which are going to be high damage outputs in fight. So this is going to be an incredible ability to use in fights, and you'll see it comes in very useful later on. Just a note on the scout trap that I just placed on the enemy side gold mine. Don't do that. Never place a scout trap there, simply because it doesn't really reveal anything. You can see here, I healed up Itchy. I actually avoided the silence. The silence, I think, would have interrupted the channeling of my ultimate, and Itchy would have died. And I just talked about how useful that ultimate is in a teamfight situation. Basically saved Itchy's life, potentially protected our turret. It was a big, big ultimate that basically bought us a lot of time. And Skaarf would have rotated up to protect the turret, but it might have been 3v1 and it might have been very difficult to defend it properly. So it was a big, big ultimate that potentially saved us a lot of map pressure and a lot of gold hemorrhaging too. You can see here I finished up Crucible 2, and with the gold I'm also going to be trying to secure a little bit more vision here, so I'm going to stock up on vision items. Every time I visit the central shop, I just like to stock up on as many vision items as physically possible, because vision is such an important part of Vainglory. And you see I'm going to start refreshing vision in all the key places, like in our tri-brush. And obviously there's also scout traps that you can put next to gold mine to keep an eye on the gold mine, and also by shop just to see if the enemy is looking for an invade or trying to set up a brush gank around shop for you. This is an area now where we're going for a siege on the turret. Now we have a range advantage with our composition. The only person that outranges us, or even maxes our range, is the Blackfeather. He is CP Blackfeather. He's got the overdriven B, which means he's got an extended range on it. But he shouldn't really be outraging the Spitfires from Skaarf. So what we can be doing is be using Buckshot and Spitfire and playing from range, just getting a lot of pressure onto the enemy without them actually being able to respond easily. And if they are responding by using Blackfeather. Now, we are struggling to get the goops on the turret. If we got goops on the turret, we actually potentially would be in a situation where we don't even need to fight. We just win this from range and then back off. What I really want to see Skaarf doing is landing a goop directly under turret and igniting it, and we might actually get an opportunity where we could take this turret and not even have to get into a duel with the enemy. Now, I made a mistake here. I felt that we could burst the Blackfeather, and you'll see in a minute he kind of overextends at the bottom. I think this is a great time for me to use A, and we can go in and try and pressure him. But Itchy's very low, and I also get silenced by the Vox, which means I can't use Fountain. I used it a little bit too late in that scenario. Probably would have been better for me to preemptively use Fountain in that scenario, and Itchy might have survived. turret, but it was a poor decision by me to look for the engage there. We didn't need to. Like I said, we could have just won this from range and kept poking the turret, but I took a risk, thought that we could kill the Blackfeather, and it was my mistake. I've got to respect CP Blackfeather's ability to burst a target, and in that scenario, unfortunately, with the silence from Vox, which is a really well placed silence as well, because it meant that I couldn't use any of my items. I couldn't use the Gauntlet. I couldn't use the Crucible at the right time. I couldn't use anything else, and they just straight up won that fight because I chose to make an engage that we didn't really need to make because, again, like I said, we had that range advantage. So I just updated my items here. I got tier 2 boots, very important to get that at some point in the game. I also then upgraded some vision, just got some more scout traps and some more flares. Every time you head to base, you want to make sure you have at least 4 to 5 flares and 1 to 2 scout traps, unless you're planning to just spam the map with scout traps where you want to buy a bit more. This is like a generic rule of thumb as a captain. Whenever you head to base, make sure you are picking up at least a couple of flares at the very least because you want to maintain vision. Now, off the back of that, you saw Skaarf pinging me because he wanted the lane farm. I will tell you this categorically, even if your laner pings you or your jungler pings you, it is more important to protect your turret from aced minions or just a big minion wave in general than to wait for a laner or a jungler to get there to protect it. Your turret is worth a lot more to the enemy team than a couple of bits of farm to your laner. And you can see here Skaarf somehow died. I didn't see how it happened, unfortunately. At this point, I'm just going to use my ultimate because it's on a fairly low cooldown and we just need to protect this turret as much as possible. You might think that's a bit of an odd ultimate to use, but Itchy was in the sort of scenario where he could have been picked off by the Blackfeather pretty easily and by the Vox. Using my ultimate here, it means he's a little bit more comfortable. He's a higher HP value. When Skaarf returns, it's easier for us to protect this turret. And again, that is my #1 priority. You know, in a lot of these trades, the #1 priority comes back to how easily can we defend our first turret. Itchy takes a lot of damage again, but you know, it's 30 seconds till my ultimate, and it doesn't cost any energy, by the way. So Grace's ultimate costs 0 energy. You can use it in any scenario. Itchy dies anyway. And I end up getting item silenced and having to just walk through the gauntlet again. This is Null Wave Gauntlet now picked up on Arden. He went second item Null Wave Gauntlet, and the only reason you would go second item Null Wave Gauntlet is because you are looking to fight as much as possible against a double hyper carry like we've got, which makes a lot of sense, you know. You want to silence me. I can't protect the hyper carries as much with the Fountain or the Crucible, and those are 2 big items that are necessary. And what it resulted in is you know, me being unable to help Skaarf in that scenario. I did use it at the end there to no avail. We also lose our first turret. So that was a really bad sequence of events for us. And right now, we're currently behind. I've picked up the Atlas Pauldrons here. This is the 3rd item because, A, I need them for Vox, but also, you know, sometimes Blackfeathers go alternating current. I actually checked this Blackfeather didn't go alternating current. I'm going to protect Itchy here. It was a really, really good B, but unfortunately, again, unable for him to sort of survive. I'm going to use my ultimate on myself just to keep myself living. And they're all also going to get the gold main. So this is a sequence of events, unfortunately, that our carries kind of overextending when they didn't need to. Itchy went a little bit far forward. Me not being in the right position to protect them either. And we've kind of just given up a huge advantage that we had in the early game. So now in the mid game, we are kind of worried about this Blackfeather. We're going to have to back off here. Actually stop. I think I stopped Arden using the gauntlet there. He was going for some sort of animation. I'm not sure. I'll have to double check. But that's something that you'll see a lot throughout this game. Grace can use her B ability to stop channeling abilities like Gauntlet. So Gauntlet has a small animation. You can block that with Grace's B. If you knock the Arden up during his animation of Gauntlet, you can stop him casting Gauntlet altogether. So you'll see that happens in a few times this game. A really, really good way to get into an aggressive position and protect your carries from an Arden Gauntlet before even having to use the Crucible. And again, we're a little bit overextended here. Skaarf nowhere near us. Actually, Itchy's just going to use the reflex box to get out. And now suddenly I'm item silenced. I'm really, really struggling, but they don't quite get the damage necessary to kill me. So that's the Null Wave Gauntlet down. And at this point, I'm telling my team, Null Wave Gauntlet is down. You know, we might be able to fight at this point if we can find a good opportunity. Once you use a Null Wave Gauntlet and you don't get anything from it, it basically becomes a dead item. So that's one of the issues about buying Null Wave Gauntlet as an item. You need to get use out of it. And once the cooldown is gone, so once it's on cooldown, it suddenly becomes a really bad item to use. Just simply because you're not really doing anything as an item. It gives you very, very little stats. The main power comes from its ability to lock down the items of an enemy target. If you use a Null Wave Gauntlet and don't get anything from from it and then fight again when it's on cooldown, it's basically a dead item. So once Nullwave Gauntlet is down, that's when I'm like, okay, we can fight, because we actually have an item advantage on our captain. I've got the Atlas Pauldrons, I've got the Crucible and the Fountain, all really, really useful items in a team fight. And you'll see Atlas Pauldrons come into a lot of use against the Vox. But at this point, we're just sort of defending as much as possible. We've got to the point where Kraken has spawned, so we're just sort of really trying to relax, not get into any sticky situations. You have to be very careful about your positioning. You have to be very careful about getting caught out when the Kraken's available, because if you die, then you just gift the Kraken to the enemy and they get a huge push with it. So at this point, you were just trying to get the Skaarf farmed in the jungle safely, Itchy's farming the lane safely, and, you know, if they go for Kraken, we will respond to it. Something else that I'm now going to talk about is the adaptation of vision. This is an important point because we've lost our first turret. Now that makes it a lot more areas of the jungle that the enemy could enter in. Through that top side, they can get through that little gap just past our first tier 1 turret. And you can see I've adapted my vision to try and protect as much of our jungle as possible. There is a scout trap in the brush nearest our tier 2. There's a scout trap in that little tiny break in the rocks just above Skaarf right now. And this is the defensive vision line you have to start taking once you lose your tier 1, because you need to keep eyes on the enemy from every scenario that they could potentially enter the jungle. There you go. I stopped the gauntlet. I stopped the gauntlet in that fight. It didn't really matter, but it did potentially protect Itchy and Skaarf, and they might be able to get out. So I basically managed to block the gauntlet with my B, and off the back of it, Itchy actually manages to get a couple of kills here and there onto some of the key targets. He actually kills the Blackfeather, doesn't quite kill the Arden and the Vox, but we turned a really, really bad fight in our favour, and Itchy, who's like one of our hyper carries, is now getting farmed up, able to shove the lane, and I actually get to finish War Treads as well. And this is something that now I'm going to expand on with Grace specifically, because I know you guys are talking about Grace specifically. The more health you get on Captain Grace, the harder you are to kill, and the better you become in the late game. Grace has got a very low base HP, which means she doesn't scale naturally as high HP as someone like a Finn or a Lance does. But that makes sense because of the fact of her Holy Shield. Her Holy Shield protects 40% damage, and she also gets a 10% passive damage reduction from skilling A in the first place. So the more health you get, the more health pool you have to work with in terms of protection. It's a little bit like Catherine with her Storm Shield. The more health you get, the easier it is to reduce damage coming into you, and the more effective HP you've got. So the more health you get, the more Holy Shields you get off, the harder it is to kill you. So the more sort of HP items that Grace picks up throughout the game, the better it is for her. And this is why in the late game I'm going to start to become pretty tanky and pretty hard to kill, because I've got, you know, a lot of health behind me now. At this point, you know, we're trying to play around item spikes, you know, waiting for Skaarf and Itchy to hit certain tier 3 item spikes, and we're looking to try to get people into choke points. Grace likes to fight in choke points for the same reason anybody with sort of AoE knockups or CC likes to fight. Again, don't manage to stop the Arden Gauntlet this time, but I'm going to channel on myself and get through the ultimate there. And we're going to bring them back towards our Crystal Miner. That's the only thing that we could have done in that scenario. Again, I was item silenced and the Gauntlet went down too. Those are two massive parts of the enemy engage that are now gone. I'm going to regenerate health very quickly because of my life spring that you get with the Fountain. You don't have to worry about getting taken too low as a captain. That's something that you should always remember. You do regenerate life very quickly because of the passive on the Fountain. So you need to just wait a little bit of time out of combat and suddenly your HP bar is going to fill up very quickly again there. That was a fight that I could have done better. I could have timed my B a little bit better to stop the Arden Gauntlet. That might have given us the opportunity to turn around and win a fight. But, you know, I used the Crucible, I used the War Treads to get out, and actually, given how the rest of our fights had been going, that's the best case scenario. Again, I'm just trying to find opportunities to go aggressive onto the Vox. If he oversteps, I'm just going to use my A, try and get the slow on him. And that's part of Grace's kit that, you know, you should always respect the fact that it's actually quite easy to make an engage with your A, because the Holy Shield that you get, it's very powerful. So if you engage with A, you get 3 seconds of massive damage reduction. It's 50% with no CP, so you get 50% reduced incoming damage if you just A into the enemy team. And 9 times, you know, a lot of times you're going to be able to just walk away. I wasn't going to say 9 times out of 10 because that's not going to be the case, but, you know, you pretty much can scot-free make those kind of engages. Don't manage to get a knockup, but they just use the Gauntlet defensively. That's a massive win for us as well, because a defensive Gauntlet means that we are now kind of unrestricted in team fights. And you can see here, if you get a team fight win like this, especially if you've been on the losing end, it's now a good opportunity to just start pushing up and clearing enemy vision, which is good because they're going to start to lose control over the middle side of the map. And when Kraken is up, that's a very important thing. You really need to try to force the enemy out of that middle side of the map. We took a really, really bad set of fights here just because of the Itchy going to tower dive. I used the A onto the tower, and unfortunately it means that we're going to lose all of that ground that we gained because we are now going to have to be defensive. They're going to clear our vision, and they're going to put more vision down again. As long as they don't take Kraken, though, you know, you don't really lose too much at this point in time. So this is now an interesting item choice that I'm going to make. I'm not too worried about Blackfeather. I don't take too much damage from Blackfeather in the grand scheme of things. He's better against the squishy targets. The person that I am worried about is Vox, and Vox has not yet built any armor shred whatsoever. He's gone for a Breaking Point Poison Shiv build, which realistically, if I build more armor, if I go towards a metal jacket, I am going to be unkillable. I can basically run at Vox with my Holy Shield and decimate him every single time. You see here, I'm going to preemptively channel my ultimate onto Itchy, which by the way, I overdriven. So I've overdriven my ultimate over anything else, and I'll talk about that after the team fight, why I did it in this certain scenario. But it basically gave Itchy a lease of life, and meant that I could then use my fountain a little bit later. Even though Itchy went down, we won that. Even though Skaarf went down, we won that fight because, you know, Itchy managed to get out the gauntlet. He forced Blackfeather away from him, and when you can force Blackfeather on the retreat, it's a massive, massive win. If you can get Blackfeather to retreat, you know, he then becomes a sitting target for something like a ranged carry like Gwen. And that was fantastic. I made a mistake here. I should have stuck around because I didn't know if Itchy was going to die and get the ace or not. I'd already started backing. The better scenario would have been to trust my teammate, and I could have taken the turret with him more easily. But this allows me to now go and set up some vision. I can't get any scout traps at this point in time because I'm building towards a metal jacket. But I believe that we have the... I thought that we might have been able to do Kraken, but with the scout trap there and with Blackfeather coming up in just 3 or 4 seconds, that wasn't the case. So I'm at the point in time now where I'm going to start buying crystal infusions. I don't have enough money to combine for a metal jacket, and I know that team fights now are going to be really important, and that's something that a lot of people forget about infusions. I don't often buy early infusions in solo queue just because I don't think the teams are often coordinate enough to make use of them. But in the late game, you know, especially when your team fights matter so much and you're not really going to get too much efficacy about building more items, I always try and refresh my infusions as much as possible, especially when Kraken is up and especially when fights around Kraken become really important. So that's something that is worth noting, that refreshing infusions at this stage of the game is very important. Team fights are very important, and Grace has got such good CP scaling ratios and benefits from cooldowns that CP infusions are really, really good. You're going to see here, I'm just going to try and ward people away. I'm going to knock them up. It's a great knock up here. I'm going to start channeling my ultimate, already use it onto the Skaarf. And that's something that I really like about Grace, by the way. Using your preemptive ultimates can get you huge amounts in team fights because it just negates any engages that a Blackfeather or a Vox would make. And because of the fact that you get a 1.5 second cooldown reduction on using your passive, you essentially can get that ultimate up very quickly. Like, mine's already up, by the way, so I can use it again whenever necessary. And you can see here, Itchy's going to get focused. I'm just going to... I'm going to let him die, actually. No, I'm not. Oh, no, I'm going to use it on myself. Sorry, I got confused. I thought I was going to use it preemptively on Itchy. I should have used it a little bit earlier on Itchy there, but we still come away with the fight and with the Crystal Sentry. Now, the mistake we're going to make here is I'm going to think that we are quick enough with just a Skaarf and me to take Kraken before the Blackfeather can get back up and available. I don't drag it far enough into the brush. I do eventually try and move it up, but again, I don't think I get it far enough is necessary. I do manage to get it into the brush here, but Blackfeather is up at this point in time. It's going to be very, very close. The worst nightmare is for Blackfeather to walk in and just steal this with his B, which, you know, I won't spoil anything for you, but it is the case. Blackfeather just walks in and takes the Kraken with his B. Luckily, we get let off. Luckily, we get let off because we can get so much damage done to it because the rest of the team are still dead or responding, that we can basically kill Kraken before it can even get to our first tier turret. So, a lot of you might be wondering about my skill choices here on the Grace. I maxed my C over B. If you max B, you get essentially a free reflex block. But maxing C when you have 2 hyper carries is, in my opinion, slightly better. You get the increased heal and the reduced cooldown, which I think for this particular game, when you are trying to protect 2 hyper carry type heroes, it's way more important to have that sort of reduced cooldown on it and the increased heal. I'm just tanking up with my Holy Shield here. I'm going to use the Crucible literally just for the shield. I know I walk into the gauntlet regardless, and then I'm going to heal up Itchy. Just again, you know, low cooldown on my ultimate now. It's 30 seconds. It's a fantastic tool to protect something like a Skaarf or a Gwen. I'm going to finish my metal jacket. As far as I was aware, there is yet to be any You know, we're yet to have any armor penetration from the Vox. This basically makes me unkillable at this point in time. With Metal Jacket and Atlas Pauldrons, I'm very, very difficult to kill. So you'll see even with the Holy Shield, Vox will do literally next to no damage to me for the most part. I'm also going to continue to use flares. People might be asking why are Scout Traps not important at this point in time. Scout Traps become, will always be important throughout the game, but if you have to make a choice between a tier 3 item and Scout Traps, you always want to have flares. Flares are non-negotiable. They need to be there at every stage in the game as a captain. But Scout Traps you can sacrifice in the late game, because as long as you're clearing the enemy Scout Traps out and not giving them a Scout Trap advantage on the map, flares are the more important vision tool, especially when you're trying to negotiate team fights like this. You can see, you're trying to keep vision control of brushes, trying to make sure you can see everyone at every time. We're now getting super aggressive here. We have to be very careful about how we play with this Crystal Sentry, because one gauntlet like that could really spell the doom for us. And you can see right now, I was going to try and channel my ultimate, didn't quite get it off, and this is a massive fight that we lose because Skaarf goes a little bit too aggressive on the Crystal Sentry. We are just going to run and walk out of this. This is kind of the best case scenario for us. We just have to kind of run for it. I do have my Fountain available as well. I also have my A to reduce damage, and at this point I'm just going to pop my Fountain. I'm not taking too much damage, and that's why they're going to switch on to Itchy, but we do manage to get away. The Buckshot will slow everybody down as well. I have my heal up, and I'm actually going to be able to use that pretty soon. I'm going to get the knock up here. I'm going to use the heal on myself because they are focusing me. It's a big heal onto me there. And they've actually overextended past the turret, which means Itchy's gone back to Fountain. He's going to start to clear things up. And you see Grace is very difficult to kill in these scenarios. Grace is super difficult to kill. I don't think Itchy actually gets any kills, which was difficult for us because we really should have done at that point. But he does actually end up getting the Arden, so big for him. He doesn't lose all the Black Feather Heartthrob stacks as well, which means he's not as easy to execute. And I get my heal up already, which is going to give him a massive health boost too. So you saw how impactful your ultimate ability for Grace is here. Even allowed him to kill the Black Feather, which now allows us to rightfully and happily secure the Kraken without much fear of a steal. Vox is not likely with his build. He's got a very low damage build to steal it. And we're going to drag the Kraken as far as you should. You can drag Kraken just out the other side of your brush, and that's the best place to have it because it forces the enemy to make a really aggressive move to try and steal it. That's where I should have taken it the first time. So if you are taking Kraken and you're tanking it, this is the best place to put it. And you can see Itchy goes and zones out Vox. He can beat Vox in a 1v1 with the build that Vox is gone. So they kind of just walk out and zone him away, and we get Kraken for free here. Does manage to, even despite Itchy using boots and me using war treads, escape. And I remember Itchy saying specifically, I hate that hero. But I use my ultimate just to heal him back up to full life. We're going to start to take away some of the enemy jungle camps, and we have the Kraken going as well. So that's really important now. We're going to be looking to push to win, or at least try and get as close to win as physically possible. So when you siege with a Kraken, and sieging is the process by which you try and take enemy turrets without fully engaging the enemy, you want to basically stand behind Kraken at all times. Kraken will always be a threat to an enemy turret. They'll want to try and deal damage to it. So you want to try and stay behind your Kraken pretty much 90% of the time. They tried to go for an engage there, and I used the Crucible really badly. Luckily, Itchy managed to kite back out of the gauntlet. Has to be very careful here, though. I had to use my ultimate early to protect him. We will get the Arden down. Arden does use the Fountain on 2 high HP targets, which isn't great. But as you can see here, Itchy, unfortunately, thinks he can outtrade the Vox, which isn't the case because Vox has got the Poison Shift build. Itchy didn't really have much energy available either. And at this point, I know that we have already lost the fight. So I'm essentially trying to buy as much time as physically possible to try and protect us. I'm going to try and channel my ultimate. I probably would have been better off channeling it on myself to buy even more time. I thought maybe I could get the heal off into the Skaarf. I think it was worth the risk because obviously the enemy has ignored the Kraken. Now, Vox does not have a critical strike build. He's got a breaking point base build, and it's a very low damage breaking point base build as well. You can't build breaking point stacks on Kraken, so actually, by keeping Vox alive, yeah, he will be able to take Kraken down fairly quickly, but she should be able to get a lot of work done here. And you can see the crystal turrets are taking huge amounts of damage, and actually, she does manage to get both crystal turrets down on this push. So we got a Kraken that gets 3 turrets on the push, and that's really important because Kraken is worth 500 gold to the enemy team. When you kill a turret, you get 300 gold for everybody. So you get 500 gold for everybody for killing the Kraken, and when you kill a turret, you get 300 gold. So you want to get at least 2 turrets to get A, the map advantage necessary from killing the turrets, but B, to get an actual net gold increase over your enemy. If your enemy only kills if your enemy kills the Kraken before it kills a turret, or if it only kills one turret, you've actually given your enemy a 200 gold advantage, despite, you know, whatever you would get in terms of map presence by killing those turrets. So that's a very important point about using the Kraken wisely. You want to make sure you get the most value out of it, otherwise you're basically giving your enemies free gold. One thing that Kraken taking does do, especially if you're behind or you're even, it does take that global objective off the map for a few minutes, allowing you to reset, set vision, and get ready for the next team fight, or try and make a catch and take Kraken and win. So remember, when Kraken's off the map, suddenly you're not going to be heavily contesting the middle side. And you can see here, the enemy team aren't as bothered. We are going to wait around. I think Skaarf checked that Blackfeather out, and that's actually going to force Blackfeather to use his boots early on. We take a little bit of return damage, which was a bit of an issue, but now I'm saying just push the lane up. You know, we've got advantage. They're not going to come towards us. They were trying to make a pick by waiting in their brush. Skaarf was very good to just put down that Spitfire there to notice that they were around. And if we just push this wave up, it is going to start threatening their crystal eventually. So it's going to start threatening their base. By shoving that wave up, they'll have to deal with it, and actually then we can use that to get advantage around this middle side of the map. So Skaarf makes a big mistake. He actually splits from us to go, and again, his obsession with the Crystal Sentry could eventually cause us to lose the game. Luckily, we group up on the Skaarf, which was the correct thing to do. I move aggressively onto the Vox, and suddenly Vox is zoned out from Skaarf, which basically saves Scarf's life. I zoned Vox out single-handedly. Then he chooses to run in. I have to use both the Fountain and the Ultimate to buy Skaarf time. The important thing about buying Skaarf time here, though, is Itchy, untouched throughout this fight. He's going to overextend here. The Ultimate comes through, but again, I get a great double knockup, which allows Itchy to kill the Vox and then eventually kill the Blackfeather. And again, that came through buying so much time. I'm also going to use that heal just at the very end there to keep Itchy from going down to the island. The Holy Shield probably bought him the time. And that was the game-winning fight. Also picking up the contraption, you know, I get a bit of cooldown reduction from that, and that's obviously super useful to Grace's kit. So, you know, that was the final item that I ended up picking up as part of my build. It means I can start getting scout traps and flares down. Yeah, I'll have a lack of flares, but at this point in time, I don't think it was super necessary to have 5 flares consistently. The contraption also allowed me to put the scout traps down when we were making those aggressive positions, so we could see enemies moving through the middle side brush when we were trying to contest around Kraken. But again, that last fight was the most important fight that we made that entire game, and it came down to a couple of key knockups and the fact that I zoned Vox out at the very start, kept Skaarf alive for long enough with my Fountain and my heal, and then Itchy basically did the work from the backline because no one was touching him. I also got a great double knockup onto the Arden and onto the Vox at the very end, which allowed Itchy to just clean them up. So that was a great fight for us right there. So this is my build path for Grace this game, and also I can show you the skills that I took and in which order. I max A first, and then I max C. Holy Nova obviously doesn't get the overdriven status. It's not so useful in this particular scenario. Now, Grace has got a very adaptable kit. The reason I maxed C was specifically because I had 2 hyper carries. I wanted the low cooldown and the high heal. And also you can see the builds on the other carries as well. So if you're interested about following any of these guys, they are Vainglorious Silver, Vainglorious Bronze level, and they all kind of know what they're doing. So if you want to take inspiration from those builds as well, I put them in there also. Thank you very much, guys. I hope this was useful to you. I've also obviously annotated as and where I can with interesting points that I couldn't include in my commentary because it's hard to talk about everything. Yeah, that was my first full Captain Grace gameplay video. I'll see you soon.